Well, hitting a Hollywood studio is one thing. A more general cyber war against businesses around the world would be quite another. Joining us now from South London is the editor of the Financial Times, Lionel Barber. Well, President Obama says that Sony's been intimidated by a dictator. Is that how you see it?
Well, there's no question that Sony capitulated in the initial days after the cyber attack, and it didn't receive much support from fellow Hollywood studios. And it did also decide to suspend distribution of the movie, which was going to go out on Christmas Day, because movie cinemas chains themselves declined to do so. So they weren't alone, but there are some very big questions to be asked about what happens when a large company, Japanese-owned, huge Hollywood studio, just capitulates to a dictatorship in North Korea.
So it's set a pretty dangerous precedent in your view?
Well, I'm not saying that the interview, this movie, which features a plot, an improbable plot, in which the North Korean leader, the five-star general, by the way, in his late 20s is blown up. This is not necessarily Citizen Kane or On the Waterfront. It's not going to receive an Oscar. But on the other hand, to quote Voltaire, the great 18th century philosopher, I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend until the death the right to say it.
So how vulnerable now do you think other businesses are to these kind of cyber attacks?
This is a real wake-up call for every major corporation around the world. If a country like North Korea, that can't even feed its own people, that is heavily sanctioned because of its nuclear weapons program. It doesn't have a nuclear weapon to deliver, but it has enough plutonium to make a nuclear weapon. If that country is capable of breaching the defenses of Sony Corporation, then everybody has to be worried. And of course, there are a lot of attacks have been going on in the City of London, major defense companies in this country, in America, in Europe. But this is the first time that it's actually been fully laid out and exposed, and with grave consequences.
Well, talking of grave consequences, I mean, that's what North Korea is now threatening. America has also promised to respond. What are the implications, in your view, for world security? Well,
we need to be a little bit careful for believing what looks like bluster on the part of North Korea. I mean, they're at first saying they had nothing to do with this incident. It was the so-called guardians of peace, and now suddenly they're saying, if you don't cooperate on a joint inquiry, and I think we can guess what that result of that would be, then you'll receive a terrible retribution. Of course, the Americans are not going to be intimidated. They're not going to take part in any such inquiry. The implications for global security are as follows. There are no rules, no international rules at all on cybersecurity. I think that's another reason why the Americans will think twice about responding in that way, but I think it's highly likely that they will look to put further pressure on the regime, people connected with the regime, and also be having a firm but quiet word with the neighbor, China, the crucial neighbor that has, if any country has some influence over the dictator in North Korea, it is China.